Babysitting Connection is an affordable membership service matching high-quality babysitters with Austin families. Babysitting Connection currently covers the Austin area from Georgetown to San Marcos. Owner Beth Heyer personally interviews each sitter, conducts background and driving record checks, and ensures that each sitter has CPR current certification. All of our sitters have valid driver's licenses and are CPR certified. Through their online booking system, members can schedule a babysitter anytime, day or night. Babysitting Connection offers several different packages, allowing you to choose the package that works best for you and your family. They pride themselves on identifying diverse sitters from a variety of backgrounds to help meet the needs of their members. Learn more about their membership packages at babysittingconnection.com. Stay tuned for a special discount for Top Knot Squad listeners at the end of the episode.
Hi, friends! I'm Naya, mom, boob nerd, board-certified lactation consultant, and lover of lipstick and curse words. I'm that weird Indian girl you knew in high school, all grown up.
And I'm Alexis, mom, birth nerd, and therapist plus doula, encouraging parents to hold joy plus what the fuck is this mess simultaneously. Some people think I'm too much, but those aren't my people. And we are the Top Knot Squad. TKS is a tiny little podcast about motherhood in real life, the good, the bad, the ugly AF.
Hosted by two women that are passionate about our beliefs and unafraid to speak our minds.
Friends that wanted to create space for all that ish we are too scared to talk about.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
If the Top Knot Squad content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps. On today's episode, we talk about childcare. As working moms, we know the challenge of finding reliable, affordable, and safe childcare. But our experience comes from a place of privilege. We're fortunate to have jobs that allow for flexibility and partners who are able to work from home if needed. Did you know that the annual childcare costs in Texas are around $14,000 a year for center-based care? The average annual cost for home-based childcare in Texas is around $10,000 annually. Nearly half of all Americans live in what's referred to as a childcare desert, which is any census tract with more than 50 children under age 5 that contains either no childcare providers or so few options that there are more than 3 times as many children as licensed childcare slots. A 2019 study from the Center for American Progress found that mothers who were unable to find a childcare program were significantly less likely to be employed than those who found a childcare program, whereas there was no impact on fathers' employment. So where does this leave single parents or families that don't have the nearly $1,000 per month per child for childcare? Today, we're here to discuss accessible and affordable childcare with Taylor Huntley. Taylor is a Black millennial mother, a wife, a birth worker, and an advocate for accessible and affordable childcare. She's the founder of Mama Mango's Care, a platform for millennial motherhood and spiritual self-care practices. She works for a local reproductive justice nonprofit by day as a program coordinator and facilitator, and is a self-studied community herbalist by night. She believes women thrive when they are supported by birth workers and community advocates that have shared life experiences. Taylor is a trained birth companion, postpartum doula, and lactation educator. Her life work centers around supporting women and their families holistically, and she believes an identified need is accessible childcare. The ATX Community Childcare Scholarship was born out of this need. The ATX Community Childcare Scholarship was born out of need. The ATXCC Scholarship is a grassroots community-based project. From the raising of funds to the process of picking the recipient, their goal is to be able to pay full tuition for an individual applicant every month and to have emergency funds available for parents that need to attend job interviews, vendor markets, and other income-driven opportunities. Welcome, Taylor. We're so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with y'all.
Yay.
Yay!
So we're going to start off by doing something we've been trying this season. It's called the What the Fuck Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you can curse as much as you want on this.
Fuck.
That's right. Get it out. Get it out. We already have that explicit rating on iTunes, so might as well, might as well do it.
Use it.
We have to use it. That's right. Anyway, so our What the Fuck Yeah segment is just share something either really amazing that made you go fuck yeah, or something not so great that made you say what the fuck. That's happened to you recently. It doesn't have to be parenting related. It can just be, whatever related. Alexis went first at our last recording, so I'll go first this time. I think my my what the fuck it's definitely a what the fuck. And I was mentioning this with our last guest. So Mercury is supposedly out of retrograde, but my shit's all still fucked up. All of my technology, I can't talk, I can't write well, everything. And so it's all kind of fucked up. But one thing that she had said was that it takes a little while for it to kind of get back into the proper orbit. And so it may take a couple more weeks. But even though it's supposedly still out of retrograde, I'm still feeling the effects. That's my what the fuck.
Yes. Is it my turn or is Alexis going?
You can go ahead.
Go ahead, Taylor.
It's funny. I keep seeing all the different memes about Mercury retrograde, and people are like, "Can we please take Mercury out the microwave because it's just too much?" Please take it out. I actually have a fuck yeah, which is amazing. So my nonprofit organization that I work for, that I'm sure we'll dive into, practices horizontal governance. And so for about a year now, I've been a program coordinator and health educator and learning so many new things. And an opportunity opened up to move into another position. And so I think in about a week or two, I'm going to be working on communications and community engagement. So really getting to hone in on social media management and press releases and just learning this completely new part of nonprofit work. And so that has to be a fuck yeah. And then also more time with my kids because I'm not having to go and do groups and different community programs. And so, which I love, but I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yes.
So
it's hard.
It's hard. So that's my fuck yeah.
That's an amazing fuck yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. I love that.
Do you want to share, Alexis?
Yeah, I think I'll share a fuck yeah, which is not typical. So I, at 28 weeks pregnant, changed providers because I was not having a good experience at the OB-GYN midwife practice that I was at. They were quite traumatizing, to be honest. And it was a really scary transition of should I, shouldn't I, is this right? What is right? I just, I'm going to have to give birth on the side of the road because there's no options. But I found a midwife that I really connected with, and we had our first prenatal today. And already, it's insane the difference in care. She was at my house for 2 hours.
Wow.
I didn't have to leave my house. I was on my couch, and she did everything. She drew my blood. She listened to the baby. I peed in a cup. All of that happened in my house. And she listened to me and validated me and didn't rush. And she was here for 2 hours. Are you kidding? So that felt really good today. So that was definitely a fuck yeah for me.
That's a huge fuck yeah. That's fantastic. I'm so glad you made that switch.
Congratulations to you for advocating for yourself.
Yes.
And finding someone who supports you in your plan.
Thank you. It was rough, but I feel like I'm on the other side of it now, and it's feeling like I've got my footing. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in a little bit. Can you share some of your story about Mama Mangoes, how that came to be, and how the ATX Child Community Childcare Scholarship Fund came to be as well?
Yes, absolutely. And so it's interesting because everything that I do for the community or like the scholarship and like this business that I have just all came out of need. Everything came out of me as a parent struggling, trying to figure out solutions, and then wondering like, how can I share this with other people? And so Mama Mangoes was just like an Instagram page. It was just a place for me to be like really transparent and honest about like this revolutionary or radical parenting that I like to call it, which is really just showing compassion for my kids and not raising them like...
I hate that that's called revolutionary. Yeah, it's...
That I like care about my kids and like respect them as humans and... you know,
their feelings.
Yeah.
And you realize that they're independent, autonomous little people. Yes.
It's so revolutionary to just, love on your kids like that. But it was just a place to share that information. Like, my kids would sometimes make this like crazy big mess. And instead of like getting upset, I would just take a picture and just start typing. Like, yes, my kids just wrote all over this wall, but like, is it really that important? Is it really something to yell about? Put my hands on them, anything like that? And I would type these things as kind of like a release for me. Mm-hmm. And then it just turned into everybody commenting and like this community conversation on this like online platform. And so I guess kind of with that community grew different things that I would make for my children and for my household. And I would, again, post them like, I made this eczema oil or this like energy clearing spray. And people would be like, can we get that? And so it just, it's just, something that's really organic. And whenever people ask me like, how did it start? I'm like, man, I was just like doing shit.
Yeah.
just doing shit I was passionate about that I felt like, was really intentional for me and my family. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, people want this. I can sell this. I can support my family with this. And kind of same thing with the scholarship. I was wanting to go back to work after having my first child and would get these job offers but couldn't afford childcare. It was like maybe, I would find a childcare that, maybe we could make work. But before we could even get the kids in childcare, we had to pay like $1,500.
Yes.
Just to start. I mean, there's childcares in Austin that are amazing and like alternative learning styles, but you have to pay first and last month's tuition.
Yes. And then a registration fee, and then a tuition fee, and then a support fee. Yeah.
I'm just like, who has $3,000 waiting for childcare?
Yeah, and that's before you can even drop your kid off in the morning. Yeah.
It's crazy. And so that's how the scholarship came to be, is just realizing that like this is a need. Sometimes people need support with tuition. Sometimes people need support going to an interview. Mm-hmm. And just like identifying that need. And the community saw it and they felt it. And we were able to raise like money. And you saw with the event that we had, like mm-hmm. people get it. They've experienced it. And it's such an amazing feeling to see like people understand something and support it so we can support families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like and I'm not trying to speak for you, I'm sorry, but just from what I've seen with the community really supporting the scholarship fund and different birth professionals or people in the birth world even, just kind of using the scholarship as all proceeds will be donated to this, or that is just people kind of almost like paying it forward.
Right.
I had a really shitty time finding friends for when we first moved to Austin. I left my whole network in Dallas, Fort Worth. And when I didn't know that, there were all these resources here, but now I'm a group leader for a nonprofit organization that does parenting groups, basically.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is my little way of paying it forward so that people who also may have a hard time finding their people or their village or whatever you want to call it, just to make that a little bit easier. So I think it's really beautiful that what you've started and the support that's rallied behind it.
Definitely.
So how did you end up finding affordable childcare?
Oh, I don't think it's like an anomaly. I don't think there's actually such thing as like affordable childcare. I try to advocate for childcare opportunities as much as I can in Austin. And I'm working on figuring out ways to like advocate with these companies. There's so many companies in Austin that are like voted number 1, number 2 best place to work. And they have all these amazing programs for their employees. But it's like, what about the parents? Mm-hmm. What about childcare assistance? What about childcare subsidies and things like that? And so I'm working on this advocating. For me, I was lucky enough to find a nonprofit organization that was mother-friendly and child-friendly, or that is mother-friendly and child-friendly. And so I'm able to bring my kids to work with me, which is like good and bad. It's like, can I really get work done when I have my kids with me? So I kind of made sure that I worked somewhere that supported that. And, there are some really cool job opportunities in Austin can we like plug different things? Yeah. There are some really cool places, like especially if you have a child under 6 months, the Mother's Milk Bank is really, really supportive of people bringing their kids with them to work. Mm-hmm. Pro Mama is a really, really good resource to find jobs that care about parents, right? Like mothers, fathers, parents in general, people in general. But the actual affordable childcare piece for me, or that I really believe in, is community building, because there's so many people in Austin that are from other cities. It's the same thing with me when I moved here from Fort Worth. I was like, if I was in Fort Worth, I would have so many people to support me and my kids and my family. And in Austin, where everyone's new here, even if you've been here for 3 or 4 years.
Nobody's from Austin. Well, there are people from Austin.
There are people, and you're like, oh, this magical being.
Here's a unicorn.
Right. But I just really believe in like community building and like finding people and parents, not even just parents, finding people in general, because child-free people a lot of times are really interested in watching kids and supporting, because, that's not something that they do on a daily basis. And so I love finding child-free people that love kids, because I'm like, here you go, take them. I got 2. You want some for a weekend? But finding people that you trust, finding stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home parents that are interested in making a little cash or interested in trading. My friends and I trade childcare all the time. And it depends on the type of work you have, right? Like I kind of have a job that's a little bit more free, and a lot of people that I know are like creatives or entrepreneurs, so their schedules are a little more free. But when you're working maybe like corporate or traditional 9 to 5, it's even harder. Mm-hmm. It's even harder, especially if you're working for a company that's not very forgiving or not very supportive.
Right. Yeah.
Or even shift work.
Right.
That has its own layers of barriers, and then the support isn't there from the company, right? Because they just need the shift covered.
Right.
So if somebody listening right now happens to own a child care facility, or they know somebody that owns it, what can they do, or what steps do you feel like they can take to make their place more accessible, or maybe not necessarily more affordable, but even just more accessible to parents who may need child care?
Right. And that's something that I'm trying to focus on more too, is like saying accessible instead of affordable, like you did, because affordable is hard. Because if you have a child care center, there's so much that you have to pay in licensing and insurance. Because at first I was like, why are these places charging so much? But it's almost like they have to, And so for access, I like to see what like opportunities that they have for work trade for parents. Because a lot of times, like in this day and age, like childcare need help with their social media. They need help with their website. Those are a lot of trades that I've talked to people about. Like, would you be open to having a parent come in and make lunches for you? It's not something that works well when it comes to kind of like like franchises and things like that. But Austin has a lot of really cool like alternative schools, really cool Montessoris, really cool like community schools where they do let parents come in and maybe work a shift a week and they get $300 to $400 off their tuition, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, you totally did.
No, I think I have a friend that her kid was at a school like that because she would volunteer. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the school, but she had like one day a week that she was like the teacher's aide.
Mm-hmm.
And then that allowed her to get a discount, which was really helpful for their family.
Right.
So that's cool.
Yeah, and even co-ops, like if it's like a group of like stay-at-home parents or parents that maybe work part-time, like even putting a co-op or a collective together and say like this one day out of the week I watch the kids, and then it kind of just goes, throughout the neighborhood or throughout your like community of friends, because like that's the only thing that really makes it affordable. Right. When it comes to centers, we can talk about access. But when it comes to like, if we're really looking for like affordability, I think it's like community building and nanny sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Nanny sharing is a great way to just help keep costs down, really.
Right.
And you have, typically, it's a pretty low child to nanny ratio. So
Right.
it works. It seems to work out for everybody. Yeah.
Right.
So what can employers do to support working families?
I feel like all employers should offer childcare assistance.
Yes.
Like that, childcare assistance.
Yes.
Or on-site childcare. Which is not the craziest thing to ask. There's so many companies in Austin that have these like amazing events, every single week for their employees, or they have an on-site gym. Can we have on-site childcare, please?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's something that we're working on at my nonprofit, is trying to figure out how we can have like, yes, we say we're kid friendly, but is it really parent friendly if you're like trying to do your work and your kid's like pulling on your hair?
Right.
But we're like, working on like having an actual space for the kids to be where they're like attention is given to them and they're supported, because just because we can bring them to work, it's not the, best thing for either one of us really. And I think on-site childcare and I think childcare assistance, luckily my partner has childcare assistance from his job and gets like 30% off, and it's amazing. We don't utilize it right now because it has to be certain childcare centers, which is kind of restrictive.
It can defeat the purpose almost, depending on how expensive or what the cost is.
Right.
Or even upfront cost.
What the cost is, because I know with his discount they use it more for like franchise childcares, and it's the same as a community-based childcare we were using.
Oh, wow.
And so it's kind of like,
that speaks volumes.
So it's hard. So it's like maybe we should say, a discount for childcare, or it's like a subsidy or something where you can use it wherever your family feels comfortable, even if that's paying grandma, like something, because it's work that should be paid for, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that also makes it hard to, like you were talking about your parenting style. And like maybe one of those schools doesn't align with how you parent and what you value. And that makes it really hard to make that decision too.
Right.
One thing I was going to comment is you mentioned just different ways that parents can do it. And something that we were able to do with, I don't think my husband had it as an option now, but we were able to have, almost like you have a flexible spending account or a healthcare spending account, we had a childcare spending account. So we were able to take money out of our paychecks tax-free, because we worked for the same company when we lived in Dallas. Take the money out tax-free, and it would go into a separate account. So we would pay for my son's school, but then they would have to give us like an itemized receipt, and we would submit the receipt to this account, or whoever it was that oversaw the child care account, and they would reimburse us with our own money. And so we were still spending the money, but there was a way for us to kind of get that back, or to help at least offset the cost. There was definitely a cap on how much you could put in there, just like with your flexible spending account or 401k or any of those things. And it was definitely something that you had to sign up for annually when it was benefit time. But again, this is something that you're just taking money from yourself and paying yourself back with it. Really, I don't think the company did not contribute towards it at all. It was all us. I think what they paid for was to have the service and to have whatever the name of the place was that oversaw everything and processed the claims and, made sure we were on the up and up with everything.
Right.
And so that was something that helped us tremendously, especially because at some point I left our cushy corporate job to go work in the nonprofit sector, which, as we all know, the pay is not necessarily commensurate to what you would get in corporate America, but you sure do get a lot of satisfaction from the job that you do. But yeah, it was really, really helpful, especially then, because otherwise, when we did the math, it's like my entire paycheck would go to childcare, and what's the point in what's even the point?
Right. Yeah.
That was why I transitioned home after Rowan, was because 2 kids in childcare. It was more than my income.
Yeah. Those numbers I read out, that $14,000 a year or $10,000 per year, that's per kid. So if you have more than one, you might get a nice little 10% sibling discount, but that's not very much money.
That's it. Yeah, we calculated it when I was looking at different jobs, especially after having my first, and I was like, it literally doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And now we're looking at kind of childcare again and what we want to do, and going not even just the traditional route, because sometimes if you're looking at more alternative styles, they're more expensive.
Yes.
Montessori is college tuition.
It's wild.
I'm just I just want my kids to be supported.
I know.
And encouraged. But yeah, it's $25,000 a year.
It's insane.
Which is just, and I was reading up, and I was like, the federal government recommends that you spend 7% of your income on childcare. And it's
That's cute. That's so cute.
Thank you so much for your recommendation.
Aw.
And we spend about 25% of our income, which is, it's crazy. When we were trying to decide about childcare, it was literally more than our rent.
Wow. More than the roof above your head.
Do you keep them overnight? It's
right.
Do they bring home diamonds? What's going on? Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, I think this relates a lot to, just what you mentioned about the federal government expecting us to spend, would you say 7%?
7% is their recommendation.
Their recommendation. Well, because all of this kind of on a legislative level, what can we be doing? Because part of this is legislation that's going to drive change, right? Because we're also one of there's only us and one other country that doesn't have paid leave as legislation. Literally us and Papua New Guinea are who don't have paid leave. Every single other country has some form of paid leave, which is just absurd. And that's relevant to this conversation too, because it's not just about, for me to be able to work, I have to be able to have access to childcare, but then my kid's going to get sick and I have to be able to take care of them when they get sick. And then even outside of that, it's not just for maternity or paternity leave, but it's what if you have a sick child, a chronically sick child, or you get an illness that requires an extended leave, or you have a family member that you have to take care of, an older adult or a parent or a relative. There's so many different scenarios where our country is just not set up to support families, yet we're the country of family values, right?
Family values, air quotes,
right,
big time right there. Yeah.
I was giving air quotes. I know y'all can't see me.
We felt them. As a country, I just don't think that we're used to paying for work. Just in our history, I don't think that we're used to paying what is considered domestic work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely correct with that.
Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah. It I know we can all go into a rabbit hole on that one, but we're not used to it. And it's I was talking to my grandparents, and they were we paid $3 a week for childcare. And this is 50, 60 years ago. So it's what level of inflation is that?
Yeah.
And
that wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. If I'm sitting here with you having a conversation about my mother, It's like it wasn't that long ago. Like I can't even calculate what type of like inflation that is if I was paying maybe about like $287 a week.
Wow.
From my grandparents paying $3.
Crazy.
It's crazy to think about. And I was looking at I've been kind of like creeping on this like policy thing. I'm like, am I going to get into like policy change and, really like tackle this and outside of like, because right now I kind of advocate within the community, right? Like I'll see an event pop up and I'm like, are you going to have childcare?
Yes.
Is this for parents? But I was looking at the different bills that people were working on and like policy changes, and there hasn't really been a lot of things since 2018. What is it called? People's Community Clinic came out with kind of like this write-up, and I was like searching all over and it didn't look like it went anywhere. I was like, well, what if I just bring this up and see what happens? Because we do a lot of like policy work and policy change within my nonprofit organization, and it's usually around like reproductive justice. But I'm like, this is reproductive justice as well, right? So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, just kind of on that note, what Alexis had said about how the lack of paid family leave in our country, it's not just about where am I going to put my kid after having a baby and returning to work, but when am I going to have to go back to work?
Right.
And so I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's a lot of birthing people who are going back to work much sooner than they would have if they had a little bit more time. And it's not all just people that work hourly, like shift workers or people that work fast food or something like that. If you think about people like hairstylists or creatives, they're going back to work much, much sooner because every day that they stay home is money that they're not, putting in their pockets or clients that they're seeing or photo shoots that they're doing or whatever. So I do think that this paid family leave affects so much more than just people in your standard 9-to-5 office job. It really is all encompassing. But I just wanted to make that little point.
Yeah. We need to work on that. We need to work on the leave because it's just, and sometimes people like applaud it. I'm like, I don't think anybody wants to be back to work 2 weeks after having a baby.
No.
I don't think that's something that like we need to support them and figure out how they can be sustained.
Without going, and I might go off into a rabbit hole, so you guys pull me back if I need to.
No, go.
But I think this country prides itself so much on this bootstrap ethic and like, I did it myself. I did this. Yes, but it was hard as hell, and I'm glad that you were able to do it, but you probably had access to all kinds of different things. Not that long ago, there was a woman who I think she was the CEO of Yahoo at the time, and she went back to work at 3 weeks or 4 weeks postpartum. However, she was the CEO of a massive tech company at the time, and she was able to build a nursery into her office. She had nanny care. She was able to take time off before the pregnancy and didn't just work up until that baby popped out like most of us do. Right. And so I really think that when these examples are held up as this shining beacon of what we should do, it's so fucked. Most of us don't have access to that. I would say like 99% of us don't have access to that.
Well, the other part of that is that that's not, that's the story in the media, but there's plenty of parents going back to work at 2 weeks that are straight suffering.
Yes.
They're doing this because they have to, and their health is put into question. Their attachment with their child is put into question. Like all these like harmful impacts of them being forced essentially to do that. And it's not, it impacts the health of the whole family, right? So I don't think those stories are in the media. We're not reading that story about, that person's story.
Right. And if they are breastfeeding, pumping is a fucking job.
It is.
You should get paid for that.
Yeah. I think this clocking out to pump is nonsense.
If you're breastfeeding or chest feeding, like, you need to get paid maybe double what you're getting paid at your job because it's hard.
It is.
Word.
It is. 100%. So I'm going to switch topics here just a little bit to keep us moving along. I know that we've been talking a lot about families going back to work and finding affordable childcare in that sense. Can you speak to anything that you know or just anything that through your work or through personal experience or whatever for teen parents or those who may be currently pursuing education, whether it's high school or college or whatever, with children?
Yes. And so for teen pregnancy or for young low-income adults, the city actually has a really cool program. And I want to say it's like a partnership between People's Community Clinic, Any Baby Can, and a few other like city-funded nonprofits. And they support you through pregnancy and 3 years old.
Wow.
And so I actually had, and you can find it under Tandem Teen Prenatal and Parenting Program. I want to say you can also search Healthy Baby, Healthy Families, and you can get a lot of information on it. I don't exactly know what the requirements are for it, but it is a really, really good resource if you're able to jump into it. I had a postpartum client that never had to buy diapers.
Wow.
She would have somebody come into the home once a week, and it's usually someone that's from the community. Depending on what type of needs you have, sometimes it might be a nurse or sometimes it's like a public health community member. And so it's really comfortable. It's not like
formal or
it's not super formal. You can
real clinical.
Clinical. That's the word. Thank you. But you can be really comfortable. And every single time they came, they would bring her boxes of diapers. Like, it was amazing.
Wow.
Like, having a baby and being low income, diapers are crazy expensive, and we know they're taxed. And so, which is another thing, but we can leave. We don't have to. We don't have to go on that right now. But it's an amazing resource. Also, Any Baby Can, just in general, going to their programming is really, really supportive. Mama Sana Vibrant Woman, who is the organization that I support and work for, we have prenatal and postpartum support groups, and they're open to any people that are identified people of color, but that includes teenagers, young people. It doesn't matter what your age is. But Tandem Teen Prenatal and Parenting Program is absolutely amazing. It's pregnancy to 3 years. And that would be the really big one that I would recommend.
Very cool. Good to know.
So we've also been talking about early parenthood so far. But I know for Naya and I, who now have kids in the school system, and we're both utilizing the public school system, so that has thankfully eliminated childcare costs in that way. But schools only goes from $745 to $250. So depending on, what type of work you do, that doesn't always fit your needs. And we have to pay for after school programs. And then when summer comes, we have to pay for summer camps. And oh my God, summer camps are the most expensive thing in the world. They fill up lightning fast. If you don't pay for all of the summer camps at once on February 1st, you may not have childcare over the summer. It's ridiculous.
It's awful. Last year, I made the mistake of waiting until right around spring break to do it. Yeah, I was fucked. They were all filled.
How much? So I have toddlers. I have 2- and 3-year-olds. And so I haven't elevated to y'all stage yet, which I am excited. Wait, I don't have to pay for school. How much are those camps?
They range from $200 a week to $600 a week. It depends on the camp, and those aren't even necessarily full days.
Yeah, those are
a lot of them are half days,
9 to 1 or something like that, which again is not optimal. Yeah, it's per week per child. Yeah.
Yep.
If you want your child to do a specific STEM one or something that's got a particular, usually it's science technology geared towards that, you're looking at the upper end of that range. It's wild. Clearly, we are in the wrong business, ladies.
I keep saying I'm gonna have a summer camp and get it funded by different businesses in Austin. So it's free to the community, but everyone has paid for it.
Right.
Who expect their employees to be at work, but their kids are not in school.
Yes.
But y'all can probably put a counter on how many times I'm going to say community while we're talking. But that's always the option that I feel like makes the most sense when we're talking about accessibility and affordability too, is like finding community. There's so many people that have their children in public school that still have to work over spring break, you know? And so just trying to figure out like how to make the pieces fit, or like the different parents that are in your circle. It's like, so if there's a stay-at-home mom, if there's somebody that has, you know, a schedule where they work weekends, so they may be off during the week, just figuring out ways to like support the kids and also support the parents and not pay $600 a week. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I'm even thinking of like me and Naya. I know like with our schedules, we each have like days off. I put that in air quotes as well, because even when we're off, we're still working.
Still parenting or doing something.
Yeah. But days that we're home and we're not like seeing clients.
Mm-hmm.
So like finding those folks were like, okay, over the summer, I see clients on Wednesdays and Thursdays and you see them on Mondays and Tuesdays. And maybe we have play dates, you know, the alternate play dates so that we can go see our clients when we have to. But my other problem with that is like proximity, which we've talked about before on other episodes.
Because we
like,
all live.
I mean, because clearly that wouldn't work for me and Naya. We live an hour apart from each other.
Yeah. Just move back.
Wait, where do you live?
I live in southern Oklahoma.
I was going to say South Dallas, basically.
Yeah. I live in Leander.
Okay. I'm in Cedar Park, so I definitely feel your pain, because I'm always like, okay, y'all, it's my day to watch kids, and nobody wants to drive to Cedar Park.
Yes, exactly. Because that's hard. You know, that's hard. And I feel like any big city, they can be so vast that it's hard to find that community, like actually in your backyard, you know?
Right. Or staying in your backyard, because usually we end up moving around. We have started incorporating sleepovers and slumber parties. So it's like, it's one thing to drive that hour at 7 o'clock in the morning when you're on your way to work, but it's maybe something different at 7 o'clock at night when there's no more traffic. We're going over, putting the kids to sleep, and then we can wake up in the morning child free and get ready for work and focus on that. We've had to just kind of become really creative, and I have a lot of people around me where our kids are around the same ages, and we're able to make it work, but it's taking time.
Yeah.
Definitely taking time.
Yeah. It definitely takes some time to form that bond, to make sure your kids like each other, you know, once they get to a certain age. My 9-year-old is starting to get to that point where he's like, he hasn't said it about anybody I know yet, but he makes this face. And I'm like, dude, come on, you're 9. Like, you can't, you're too little to be this picky about people yet. You got a couple years before you hate everybody like your mom does. Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, we have semi-incorporated that on which of course that's expensive too, like to pay a sitter is sometimes more than actually wherever you go to dinner.
Yep.
But we have a close friend from our old school before we moved, and like Rory like legitimately is distraught at how much he misses this friend. So it's also because we're motivated to like let him see this friend that he misses. But we do sleepovers, and then we trade sleepovers on a weekend, and then we get like a night away, you know, without having the cost of childcare.
The nanny sharing is really helpful too, if you can find someone that, you know, both families or however many families connect with. I love that about like babysitting connection. Plug, love you, Beth. But it's awesome when you can have like, they have like the tiers where the price kind of goes up $1 depending on how many children you have. And so being able to have a sitter that's comfortable with having 4 kids at, I don't know, $15 or $16 an hour, but you're splitting that, you know, because that's kind of like the price of drop-in here in Austin, because we used to utilize that for, especially for like events and stuff like that, or date nights. It's like $15 an hour by yourself. Then you still want to like maybe go eat, maybe watch a movie. It can be like a $200, $300 date night.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're doing and how many kids you need to have in that drop-in. And so, making the kids think it's a fun summer party for them, but you get to go and have like parents' night out. And that's something also that a lot of these like kind of smaller community-based daycares are starting to offer. It's parents' night out a lot.
Yeah, from like 7 to 11 or whatever for kids of such and such age. Like they'll even say, come in your pajamas. We're going to have a pizza party and then we're going to do this and all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, again, it's just, I mean, even when we go out and we hire a sitter, like we just had a date over the weekend. The sitter was supposed to stay till 11. Who texts her at 10 o'clock saying we're really tired? We're going to come home early. We paid her for her time, of course, because that's what we had talked about. We're not jerks, but we paid her for what we talked about. But we were like, man, because again, babysitting connection plug. We went through them to book the sitter, and so looking through it, and I was like, wow, you can book sitters all night or up until like 2 or 3 in the morning. My husband's like, who can stay out that late? And I was like, not me.
But it sounds really good.
I know, it does. It does.
It sounds good, but as soon as like 10:30, 10:45 hits, we like turn into pumpkins and we're like.
We don't talk at that point. We just yawn at each other because we're so tired.
We try to go to the movies because that's what we did like before we had kids, and we usually fall asleep. So it's just like the movies watching us. We're so exhausted.
Well, I think our squad wants to know question is kind of linked into something we had put down as well to talk about. But we did have a listener ask about, what are your thoughts on other childcare options? So not just like, you've talked a lot about nanny shares, but what about, au pairs? And like thinking about, is this an option that's typically only accessible to a certain population? And then even that links into our question, which is, this is more from Naya. I don't know if you want to take over. You did this research.
Yeah, I was fell down a Google rabbit hole, as it happens sometimes. There's been a lot of concerns and criticisms about the au pair programs in this country. So for those who don't know, an au pair is it's usually a younger person, typically a woman, who comes over from another country for a set number of time. Typically, they go through an agency just like the family, and you match an au pair with the family. They stay with that family for that period of time. The family provides them with room and board in exchange for so many hours of childcare, usually 40 to 45 hours per week, but sometimes less than that, depending on the family. And then they're given a fee. They're paid as well, but that payment is typically significantly below even what minimum wage is. And so it gets a little bit complicated because there's immigration visas and things like that are involved in there too. But the criticism comes back from people saying that this is almost like a way of modern day indentured servitude. And there's been more pushes to have the government do more checks and balances on the way that things are and to reform this a little bit. No solid answers. And I will say that I have several friends who have au pairs, and I don't think that – I feel like – knowing my friends and knowing these families, I don't think there's any, sketchy stuff going on, but there are a frightening number of au pairs who report just abuses, sexual, physical, emotional. Their families are threatening, I'm gonna send you back, or you're gonna have to go back to where you came from, or whatever like that. And I don't know anybody like that, but obviously it must happen to somebody. Can you speak to that at all?
Sorry to your friends that are listening. I can't. I want to say I don't love the idea. I don't really like the idea. For me, it's so unregulated, and it feels like it's so unsafe for everybody involved. Everybody. There's like no regulations really behind it. There's these different agencies, and you never know what's like a really supportive agency that's like going by somewhat of a book that they have, or what's an agency that's just looking to place people and make money. There's no really safety that's put in place for these people that are coming over to support these families. There's not really any vetting. You know, of the
who they're
families.
going to be with.
Yeah, depending on the agency.
And a lot of times, typically, these families will pay for cell phones and things like that. And again, it's just the power dynamic is really weird and icky. For it's icky. It's not even weird. It's just straight up icky and not okay.
It's also really interesting to me because, I mean, and maybe this is a stereotype, but I feel like the people that I think of that use an au pair are wealthy, but it's like a way to save money. Like talking about like affordability, they're using the service because it's going to be cheaper in the long run to do it this way. But it's yet maybe they're not the type of family that, you know, really needs to do that. And that feels icky to me too. But maybe that's a stereotype I have.
I think about that too, because you do have to have, you know, usually a certain type of income to be able to afford another person to be in your home, and then also to work with these agencies, because a lot of them, you do pay a lot of them, right?
Yes.
And so you have to have the money to be able to pay that. And it's also kind of like playing on this like ideal that people really shouldn't get paid fairly for this work.
Right.
It's kind of like devaluing that part too. And so it's just it just sounds so unsafe for these people that are coming over and like wanting to support families. And it's like we have this information of people who have reported what they've gone through, but it's like we can't even imagine how many things are unreported because of the power dynamics. And then also I was reading that if they do get dropped from a family, they have 7 days to find another family or they get sent back to their home country. So it's just kind of like, who's gonna risk that?
Right, right.
So it's just like, it gives me like goosebumps when I think about it, but it just feels like so chilling because we are, as a country, kind of like touching on these things that are like, you know, indentured servitude or like slavery, like modern day slavery. You know, it's just like, it's
sex trafficking.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
All of that.
Yeah, all of it. And it's just, and again, it makes me nervous for everybody involved. Everybody. So, and we're talking about like kids too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
sure your friends have good au pairs.
I know. No,
Sorry.
It's okay. It's fine. I mean, and again, this may be very well that something that they may not have considered even. It may not be on their radar. So it's fine. I don't have an au pair. It's fine. Yeah. I think we're about out of time. So can you tell us tell our listeners how they can find you, how they can find ATX Community Childcare Scholarship too?
Yes. If you're interested in learning more about the scholarship, you can follow me on Instagram at Watch These Kids, because that is the goal for people to watch these kids, and just kind of see this like journey of going through being a childcare advocate and going through Austin, and finding childcares that are more accessible, because we're going to move away a little bit from affordability and move into accessibility. If you want to follow me and see how crazy me and my family are, you can follow us at Mama Mangoes. And you can also get information on products, the scholarship, and just everything going on in within our community at mamamangoscare.com.
And we will link to all of these things in our show notes. So you can head back over to iTunes or Spotify or wherever and click to follow Taylor and to learn more about all of the cool stuff she's doing.
Yes.
Yay.
Awesome.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you for joining us
so much. It's been a dream of mine and it's finally come true.
Yay.
Babysitting Connection was founded on the idea that parents already have enough on their plate. Finding reliable and trustworthy babysitters can be a lot of work. Babysitting Connection can help. Your membership is easy to use and scheduling can be done any time of the day or night. With affordable membership options, they take the stress of finding childcare off your to-do list.
In partnership with the Top Knot Squad, listeners can receive their first month of standard membership free with promo code TOPKNOT. Head to babysittingconnection.com to sign up. Join today, book a date night for this weekend, and give yourself babysitting freedom.
If the Top Knot Squad's content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. While you're there, leave us a review. You can find us on social media. Just search for Top Knot Squad. We welcome your feedback and love making new friends.